You think you are weak because you are gentle. You think you are unnoticed because you are quiet. You think your kindness is a liability in a world that celebrates noise, pride, and aggression. But hear me clearly, your kindness is not weakness. It is discipline. It is controlled strength. It is power restrained by obedience to God. And the day God calls you to battle, the same kindness that made people underestimate you will become the force that makes darkness tremble. There is a fire inside you that has not yet been fully revealed. You have mistaken your patience for passivity. You have mistaken your humility for smallness. But God did not design you to be small. God shaped your spirit with intention. God placed within you both compassion and courage. You are kind, yes, but you are not fragile. You are merciful, yes, but you are not powerless. There is a difference between being peaceful and being defenseless. Peace is strength under control. And when God calls you to stand, that peace transforms into authority. Many people misunderstand the nature of true spiritual strength. They believe that the loudest voice is the strongest voice. They believe that the most aggressive person is the most powerful person. But God does not measure strength by volume. God measures strength by obedience. You have been quiet because you were being trained. You have been overlooked because you were being prepared. God was not ignoring you. God was refining you. Steel is not forged in comfort. It is forged in fire. And your seasons of silence were not wasted seasons. They were shaping seasons. You are kind until called to battle. Understand that sentence deeply. It does not mean you change your character when conflict comes. It means your character reveals its full dimension. A river can look calm on the surface, but when pressure builds, it can carve through mountains. You are that river. God placed gentleness in you so you would not misuse your strength. God placed patience in you so you would not react out of ego. But when God commands you to move, you will not move with insecurity. You will move with divine conviction. Some of you have been in situations where people pushed you, provoked you, tested you. They mistook your silence for fear. They mistook your forgiveness for weakness. But what they did not understand is that you are not responding because God had not given you permission to respond. You are not fighting because God had not assigned you to that battle. There are battles that are distractions, and there are battles that are divine appointments. Wisdom is knowing the difference. You must learn this. Not every attack deserves your attention. Not every insult deserves your energy. Not every misunderstanding deserves your defense. When you react to everything, you reveal insecurity. When you are secure in God, you know that your identity is not determined by the noise around you. And so you remain kind, you remain calm, you remain disciplined. But when God says now something shifts, when God calls you to battle, it is not to destroy people. It is to defend purpose. It is to protect destiny. It is to confront injustice. It is to stand for truth. There is a holy boldness that comes from alignment with God. It is not arrogance. It is not pride. It is not ego. It is clarity. It is knowing that you are not fighting for your own reputation. You are standing for what God has entrusted to you. There are moments in life when kindness looks like silence. And there are moments when kindness looks like confrontation. Do not confuse confrontation with cruelty. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is draw a boundary. Sometimes the most faithful thing you can do is say no. Sometimes obedience to God requires you to step into a space that makes others uncomfortable. And that is when you discover who you truly are. The enemy of your destiny hopes you remain confused about your identity. He wants you to think you must choose between being kind and being strong. But that is a false choice. You are kind because you are strong. Only weak people are cruel without reason. Only insecure people attack without purpose. But when God calls a person to battle, that person does not fight with chaos, they fight with clarity. You must understand the nature of spiritual battle. It is not always loud. It is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is internal. Sometimes it is the battle against fear. Sometimes it is the battle against doubt. Sometimes it is the battle against the voice in your own mind that says, stay small, stay quiet, stay invisible. But God did not create you to live hidden in fear. God created you to live anchored in faith. Your kindness has been protecting your heart from becoming bitter. Your kindness has been shielding your spirit from corruption. Every time you chose patience instead of revenge, you grew stronger. Every time you chose forgiveness instead of resentment, you grew deeper. Every time you chose restraint instead of retaliation, you prove that you are governed by God, not by impulse. That is power. That is maturity. That is preparation. But there comes a moment when preparation meets purpose. There comes a moment when God says, enough, enough compromise, enough injustice, enough delay. And when that moment arrives, you will not hesitate, because your courage will not come from anger. It will come from alignment. When you are aligned with God, fear loses its grip. When you are aligned with God, confusion dissolves. When you are aligned with God, you do not ask, can I handle this? You ask God, how do you want me to move? Your battle is not about proving yourself. It is about expressing what God has already placed within you. And let me tell you something powerful. God never called you to a battle without equipping you for it. If you are facing resistance, it is because there is value in you worth resisting. If you are encountering opposition, it is because there is potential in you. Worth opposing. Do not be intimidated by the size of the challenge. Be encouraged by the fact that God considered you capable. There are people watching you. They see your kindness. They see your humility. But they do not see the discipline behind it. They do not see the prayers you whisper when no one is around. They do not see the tears you shed in private. They do not see the surrender you practice daily. And that is why they are surprised when you rise. They thought you were passive. They did not realize you were positioned. When God calls you to battle, you will not fight alone. You will fight with conviction, anchored in divine presence. There is a strength that does not come from muscle. There is a courage that does not come from personality. There is a boldness that does not come from experience. It comes from trust. When you trust God fully, you are no longer terrified of outcomes. You are focused on obedience. Some of you have been avoiding necessary confrontations because you fear losing relationships. But let me tell you the truth. Any relationship that requires you to betray your calling is already misaligned. When God elevates your responsibility, your tolerance for disrespect decreases. When God sharpens your vision, your patience for confusion decreases. This is not pride, it is growth. You are kind until called to battle. And when that call comes, you will not become a different person. You will become a fuller version of yourself. You will discover that the same heart that feels deeply can also stand firmly. The same voice that speaks gently can also speak boldly. The same spirit that forgives quickly can also confront directly. These are not contradictions. They are dimensions. Do not fear your own strength. Do not suppress your own authority. If God has placed a mantle of responsibility on your life, embrace it. You cannot shrink to make others comfortable. You cannot dilute your conviction to avoid tension. There are seasons for softness, and there are seasons for steel. Both are from God. Right now, some of you are in the calm before the assignment. You feel a stirring. You sense that something is shifting. You feel pressure building. That pressure is not to crush you. It is to activate you. God is awakening something inside you. And when the moment comes, you will know. There will be no confusion. There will be clarity. Remember this always, kindness is your foundation. Courage is your expression. Obedience is your compass. And God is your source. When you walk in that understanding, you do not have to prove your strength. It will reveal itself at the appointed time. The world does not need more loud people. The world needs more aligned people. People who are kind without being naive. People who are bold without being arrogant. People who are humble without being invisible. That is who you are becoming. So stand firm in your kindness. Guard your heart. Refuse to let bitterness take root. But also be ready. Be ready for the call. Be ready for the moment when God says step forward. Because when that moment arrives, you will not hesitate. You will rise with clarity. You will move with authority. You will speak with conviction. And the same people who underestimated your gentleness will witness your strength. You are kind until called to battle. And when God calls you, you will answer not with rage, not with ego, not with pride, but with unshakable faith and disciplined power, anchored in the one who formed you, prepared you, and appointed you for such a time as this. Do not be surprised when the call to battle feels inconvenient. God does not always schedule transformation according to your comfort. Sometimes the call will interrupt your routine. Sometimes it will disrupt your plans. Sometimes it will require you to let go of an image you carefully maintained. But when God summons you, it is not to harm you, it is to elevate you. The battlefield is not a place of destruction for the obedient, it is a place of revelation. You will discover in that moment that courage is not loud emotion. Courage is quiet certainty. It is the unwavering awareness that if God has permitted this confrontation, then God has already gone before you. And when you know God goes before you, you stop negotiating with fear. Fear loses its authority when faith steps forward. Many people admire bravery, but few understand its origin. True bravery is born from surrender. When you surrender your reputation, your comfort, your need to be liked, and your attachment to outcomes, you become dangerous to every force that tries to intimidate you. Because intimidation only works on those who have something to lose. But when you have placed everything in the hands of God, what can truly be taken from you? There is a difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is emotional. Response is intentional. Reaction is driven by ego. Response is directed by purpose. Before God calls you to battle, He trains you in restraint so that when you do step forward, you are not controlled by impulse. You are governed by wisdom. You are steady. You are precise. And your words carry weight because they are not scattered carelessly. You must understand that every battle assigned by God has a deeper objective. It is rarely about the surface issue. It is about alignment. It is about refining your discernment. It is about stretching your capacity. When you confront opposition with obedience, something shifts inside you. You stop seeing yourself as fragile. You stop seeing yourself as accidental. You begin to recognize that you are entrusted with influence, entrusted with responsibility, entrusted with the power to shift atmospheres. Yes, shift atmospheres. Because when a person aligned with God enters a room, the energy changes, not because they are loud, but because they are anchored. When you are grounded in trust, you do not absorb chaos, you stabilize it. When you are centered in obedience, you do not amplify confusion, you clarify it. And when battle arises, you do not panic, you position yourself. Some of you have been asking God for elevation, but elevation always comes with confrontation. Higher ground requires stronger footing. Wider influence attracts sharper resistance. And deeper purpose demands firmer conviction. Do not ask for growth and then resent the resistance that grows you. The resistance is not proof of abandonment. It is evidence of advancement. You are never meant to be permanently sheltered. Protection is not isolation from challenge, it is preservation through challenge. God protects you not by removing every obstacle, but by strengthening your spirit to endure and overcome them. And as you endure, your faith matures. As you persist, your identity solidifies. As you stand, your authority expands. Authority is not something you demand, it is something you embody. When you walk consistently in integrity, when you choose truth over convenience, when you honor God in private before you speak in public, authority begins to rest on you naturally. And when battle comes, you do not have to shout to be heard. Your presence speaks before your voice does. There will be moments when you feel misunderstood, moments when people question your shift. They will say, you used to be so quiet. They will say, you used to let things go. And you will respond inwardly, I still am kind, I still forgive, but now I understand my assignment. Growth will always confuse those who benefited from your silence, but do not let misunderstanding pull you back into smallness. You are not responsible for everyone's comfort. You are responsible for your obedience. When God expands your discernment, you begin to see patterns you once ignored. You recognize manipulation where you once saw charm. You recognize compromise where you once saw flexibility. And with that recognition comes responsibility. Responsibility guard your time. Responsibility guard your focus. Responsibility guard your calling. Battle is not always about confrontation with people. Sometimes it is about confrontation with distraction. Distraction is subtle. It drains your energy without obvious conflict. It keeps you busy but not productive. It makes you reactive instead of intentional. And when you are distracted, you are weakened. But when God calls you to battle, He sharpens your focus. He reminds you what truly matters. You cannot fight effectively if you are divided internally. That is why inner clarity precedes outer courage. Before you stand before others, you must stand within yourself. You must settle the question, who am I under God? When that question is answered, external pressure loses its ability to fracture you. Do not underestimate the power of inner alignment. A person who knows who they are under God cannot be easily manipulated. They cannot be easily threatened. They cannot be easily silenced because their validation does not come from applause and their worth is not determined by acceptance. There will be times when the battle requires patience instead of movement. Do not confuse waiting with weakness. Waiting under God's instruction is strategic. It is positioning. It is trusting that timing is as important as action. When fruit is forced before its season, it lacks sweetness. When action is forced before its timing, it lacks impact. Trust the timing of God. Trust that if you are still in preparation, it is because preparation is protecting you. You do not send a soldier into conflict without training, and you do not step into responsibility without formation. The delay you resent may be the discipline you require. As you continue forward, remember that battle is not fueled by anger but by conviction. Anger burns quickly and fades. Conviction endures. Anger reacts to offense. Conviction responds to purpose. When your actions are driven by conviction rooted in God, they are steady and sustainable. And do not forget compassion even in confrontation. Your kindness does not disappear in battle, it becomes refined. You can correct without humiliating. You can resist without dehumanizing. You can defend truth without abandoning mercy. This balance is not easy, but it is powerful. It reflects maturity, it reflects alignment. The greatest victories are not always visible. Sometimes the greatest victory is mastering your own impulses. Sometimes it is choosing restraint when provoked. Sometimes it is speaking truth when silence would be easier. These victories shape your character more deeply than public applause ever could. You are being shaped into someone who can carry weight without collapsing, someone who can influence without being corrupted, someone who can lead without being consumed by ego. And that shaping process requires both kindness and courage. When you feel weary, remember why you stand. You do not stand to dominate. You stand to uphold what is right. You do not stand to prove superiority. You stand to fulfill responsibility. You do not stand alone. You stand supported by the one who sees what others overlook. There is a strength that comes from knowing that God is aware of every injustice, every betrayal, every silent sacrifice. You do not have to avenge yourself. You do not have to exaggerate your story. You do not have to manipulate outcomes. Your role is obedience. God handles the rest. And as you walk this path, something extraordinary happens. Your fear begins to shrink. Not because challenges disappear, but because your trust grows. Trust transforms perception. What once looked like a threat now looks like an opportunity to witness faithfulness. What once felt overwhelming now feels manageable because you no longer rely solely on yourself. You are never meant to rely solely on yourself. This is the revelation that unlocks unshakable courage. Your strength is sourced beyond your own limitations. Your wisdom is guided beyond your own experience. Your endurance is sustained beyond your own capacity. When you truly internalize this, battle does not intimidate you, it refines you. And refinement is not comfortable. It exposes flaws. It challenges assumptions. It stretches patience. But refinement produces clarity. It removes excess. It sharpens focus. It purifies intention. And once refined, you move differently. You speak differently. You decide differently. Let your kindness remain your foundation. Let your courage be your expression. Let your obedience be your strategy. And let your trust in God be your anchor. Because when the next call comes and you will not hesitate. You will not shrink. You will not retreat into false humility. You will step forward with steady eyes and a grounded heart, not to harm, not to dominate, not to prove, but to fulfill. And in that fulfillment, you will discover that you were never merely kind. You were always powerful. Your gentleness was strength in its purest form. Your patience was preparation. Your silence was strategy. And your battle was not the beginning of your transformation. It was the unveiling of who God has been shaping you to become all along. There is another dimension you must understand about this battle. It will reveal the difference between those who admire you and those who are assigned to you. When you are quiet and accommodating, many will gather around you because your gentleness benefits them. But when you rise in obedience to God and begin to stand firm, some will scatter. Do not grieve every departure. Not everyone who applauded your kindness was prepared to endure your courage. God will always filter your environment when He elevates your responsibility. Elevation requires separation. Not because you are better than anyone, but because clarity cannot thrive in constant noise. When God calls you to battle, He often calls you to focus. And focus demands boundaries. You cannot wage a purposeful fight while entertaining every opinion. You cannot protect your calling while constantly explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. There comes a time when silence is not retreat, it is strategy. And hear this deeply, battle will test your motives. It will expose whether you are standing for ego or for obedience. If your heart is rooted in pride, opposition will provoke you into recklessness. But if your heart is rooted in reverence for God, opposition will drive you to prayer, reflection, and disciplined action. That is why inner purification always precedes outer authority. God refines your intentions so that when you stand clean. Some of you are entering seasons where you must speak truths you once avoided. Truth is not cruelty. Truth is alignment. But truth without humility becomes harsh, and humility without truth becomes compromise. God calls you to embody both. When you speak, let your words be anchored in sincerity. Let them carry the weight of conviction, not the heat of resentment. When your speech is guided by God, it does not wound. Recklessly, it pierces with purpose. Understand that spiritual battle is rarely about destroying opponents. It is about dismantling falsehoods. It is about breaking chains of limitation. It is about confronting systems, patterns, and habits that resist growth. Sometimes the battlefield is your workplace. Sometimes it is your family environment. Sometimes it is your own mindset. Wherever falsehood stands against purpose, there the battle exists. And do not underestimate the battle within your own thoughts. Before you confront external resistance, you must silence internal doubt. Doubt whispers, you are too soft. Fear whispers, you are not ready. Insecurity whispers, you will fail. But faith answers, God prepared me. Faith answers, God sustains me. Faith answers, God is sufficient. When you learn to answer your own doubts with truth rooted in trust, you become immovable. Immovable does not mean rigid. It means grounded. A tree rooted deeply in the earth bends in strong wind but does not break. Why? Because its foundation is secure. Your foundation is your trust in God. If that foundation is shallow, every criticism will shake you. Every rejection will wound you. Every obstacle will discourage you. But when your foundation is deep, storms become proof of stability rather than threats to survival. You must also learn discernment in battle. Not every voice deserves equal weight. Not every challenge requires immediate reaction. Discernment allows you to distinguish between constructive correction and destructive distraction. God will sometimes send correction through unlikely sources. Remain humble enough to receive wisdom, but also remain wise enough to reject noise disguised as advice. There will be moments when standing for what is right feels lonely. Loneliness is not always a sign of isolation. Sometimes it is evidence of integrity. When you refuse to compromise, you may find fewer companions, but what you lose in numbers, you gain in strength. One person aligned with God carries more impact than a crowd driven by confusion. And let me speak to those who feel exhausted by constant restraint. You have held back anger. You have swallowed frustration. You have chosen peace repeatedly. You are tired. But understand this, your restraint was not suppression, it was cultivation. You were cultivating discipline. You were cultivating self-control. You were cultivating wisdom. Now when you act, you will act from maturity, not from accumulated rage. Maturity changes the nature of your battle. Immaturity fights to win arguments. Maturity fights to preserve purpose. Immaturity seeks validation. Maturity seeks alignment. Immaturity demands attention. Maturity commands respect without demanding it. When you operate from maturity rooted in reverence for God, your presence becomes authoritative without being aggressive. And remember this powerful truth, your battle will often unlock someone else's breakthrough. When you stand for justice, you empower the silent. When you confront manipulation, you free the oppressed. When you draw boundaries, you model dignity. Your courage becomes a blueprint for others. That is why your obedience matters beyond your personal comfort. It creates ripple effects you may never fully see. Do not despise small battles. Small acts of courage build capacity for larger assignments. Each time you choose truth over convenience, you strengthen your spiritual muscles. Each time you refuse to participate in gossip, you sharpen your integrity. Each time you resist temptation to retaliate unfairly, you solidify your character. Character is built quietly, but it is revealed publicly. There will also be moments when God instructs you to withdraw from a fight others expect you to join. This is where trust becomes critical. You must not let public pressure dictate private obedience. If God says step back, step back. If God says move forward, move forward. Your allegiance is not to popular opinion, it is to divine direction. And when victory comes hand, it will come guard your humility fiercely. Victory can intoxicate the ego if you are not vigilant. Remember who sustained you. Remember who guided you. Remember who strengthened you when you felt inadequate. Gratitude protects you from arrogance. Acknowledgement of God preserves your balance. There is a profound mystery in being both gentle and formidable. The world struggles to categorize such a person. They want you to fit into extremes, either passive or aggressive, either silent or explosive. But you are neither extreme. You are integrated, you are balanced, you are governed by a higher wisdom. When you walk into spaces with this balance, people sense it. They may not understand it, but they feel it. They sense that you are not easily manipulated. They sense that you are not easily intimidated. They sense that your kindness is intentional, not naive. And that awareness shifts how they treat you. You do not need to announce your strength. You simply need to live anchored in God. Strength revealed at the right time carries greater impact than strength displayed constantly. Restraint builds credibility. Consistency builds trust. And trust amplifies influence. Do not fear the transformation that battle brings. Every confrontation faced with integrity chisels away insecurity. Every challenge endured with patience deepens your resilience. Every decision made in obedience sharpens your discernment. You are not becoming harsher. You are becoming clearer. Clarity is power. When you are clear about your values, you are less likely to compromise. When you are clear about your mission, you are less likely to drift. When you are clear about your identity under God, you are less likely to seek approval from unstable sources. Some of you are on the edge of stepping into roles you once doubted you could handle. Leadership may be calling you. Responsibility may be increasing. Influence may be expanding. Do not shrink back. The very traits you thought were weaknesses, your empathy, your patience, your thoughtfulness are assets. They make you a different kind of leader, a leader who listens before speaking, a leader who considers before deciding, a leader who corrects without humiliating. Such leadership is rare, such leadership is powerful, and such leadership is desperately needed. As you continue forward, remember that battle does not define you. Obedience defines you. Courage expresses you. Kindness grounds you. And trust in God sustains you. You are kind until called to battle, and when that call echoes through your spirit again, you will rise not with panic but with poise, not with hostility but with holy conviction, not with confusion but with clarity. Because you have learned that gentleness and strength are not enemies within you, they are allies shaped by God for moments that require both grace and grit, mercy and might, patience and power, humility and unwavering resolve. So now you understand, your kindness was never a flaw. It was never a weakness. It was never a sign that you were incapable of standing strong. It was evidence that you were governed by something higher than impulse. It was proof that your spirit answers to God before it reacts to people. And that is why when the call to battle comes, you do not transform into someone else, you reveal who you truly are. You were never meant to live in constant conflict, but neither were you created to live in silent compromise. There is a sacred balance that God places within those He prepares for purpose, a heart soft enough to care, a will strong enough to stand, a spirit humble enough to listen, a conviction firm enough to resist. This is the harmony that defines you. As you walk forward from this moment, carry this truth deeply in your soul. You do not fight to prove your worth. Your worth was established by God long before any challenge arose. You do not stand to gain identity. You stand because your identity is already anchored. You do not rise to dominate others. You rise to protect what God entrusted to you, your integrity, your calling, your peace, your purpose. Let your kindness remain visible. Let it shape how you treat the weak, the overlooked, the misunderstood. Let it guard your heart from becoming hardened by betrayal, but never confuse kindness with surrendering your boundaries. Never confuse patience with tolerating injustice. When the moment demands courage, step forward without hesitation. When truth requires a voice, speak without fear. When responsibility calls your name, answer without shrinking. And remember, you are never alone in your standing. The same God who formed your gentle heart is the one who fuels your courageous spirit. The same God who taught you restraint is the one who empowers your authority. The same God who refined you in silence is the one who will sustain you in confrontation. You do not rely on your own strength. You draw from a source that does not diminish. There will be future battles. There will be moments of testing. There will be seasons where pressure increases and expectations rise. But now you know who you are. You are disciplined, not weak. You are patient, not passive. You are merciful, not naive. And when alignment with God requires boldness, you will not retreat. Stand with a calm heart. Move with deliberate steps. Speak with measured authority. Let your life testify that true strength is not loud, but unwavering. Let your journey prove that the gentlest soul, when aligned with God, becomes unshakable in purpose. You are kind until called to battle, and when God calls, you rise with grace in your heart, fire in your spirit, clarity in your mind, and unwavering trust that every step you take in obedience is guided, guarded, and strengthened by the one who prepared you for such a time as this.